My name is Maya Reed, I'm 24, and my world had shrunk to the size of a spreadsheet. The fluorescent lights of the accounting firm hummed a monotonous tune, a soundtrack to a life spent reconciling numbers that weren't mine. Each day, I'd stare out the window at the gray Missouri sky and picture the world in shutter clicks and apertures, a framing of light on a stranger's face, the geometry of a shadow stretching across the pavement. But my camera, my real passion, was collecting dust in a closet. Instead, I collected a steady paycheck, a significant chunk of which made a monthly pilgrimage to my family's bank account. It paid for my sister's private school, for the mortgage on a house I no longer lived in, for the illusion of a perfect family I was starting to believe I'd never been a part of. The call came on a Tuesday, the most beige day of the week. My dad, Richard, his voice booming with a forced cheerfulness that always set my teeth on edge. Maya Bean. How's my favorite little accountant? I murmured something noncommittal, the cursor on my screen blinking, waiting. Then my mom, Brenda, cut in, her voice smooth as silk and just as thin. Honey, you know your sister Olivia's 16th is coming up. I knew. Of course, I knew. For weeks, Olivia's Instagram had been a minefield of hints, screenshots of celebrity parties, passive-aggressive captions about what a truly iconic, sweet 16 looked like. Brenda continued, your father and I were thinking, well, you're just so good at this sort of thing. The planning, the details. We want to give her the world, but you know how busy we are. It wasn't a question. It was a directive wrapped in cheap praise. They wanted a party to impress Olivia's new, wealthy friends, a spectacle to broadcast their status. And I was the designated worker bee. I wanted to be classy. Olivia's voice suddenly piped in, having been handed the phone. There was an unmistakable boredom in her tone, the sound of a queen surveying her surf. Like, champagne-colored balloons, not that tacky pink stuff. And a live band. Not some cringe DJ. As she listed her demands, my eyes drifted to a small, silvery scar on the back of my hand. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was 18, clutching an acceptance letter to a summer photography program in New York. The same week, Olivia decided she absolutely had to go on the school ski trip to Aspen. The trip cost nearly $2,000 we didn't have. I ended up selling my first real camera, a vintage Canon my grandfather had left me, to a pawn shop for a fraction of its worth. My dad had clapped me on the shoulder. You'll get another one someday, Maya Bean. This is more important. It's for your sister. This was just another one of those moments. Another sacrifice placed on the altar of Olivia. I'll see what I can do, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The excitement on the other end of the line was palpable. Not excitement for me, or for my effort, but for the show they were about to produce, with me as the unpaid, uncredited director. The spreadsheet on my screen blurred. The numbers seemed to mock me. I was just another asset to be managed, another resource to be drained. The next 3 months were a blur of exhaustion. My life became a tightrope walk between my 9-to-5 and a second, unpaid job as a high-end party planner. The sun would rise on my drive to the office and set on my drive home, where I'd trade my calculator for a binder overflowing with swatches, quotes, and contracts. I ate instant noodles over my keyboard, my personal savings account dwindling with each deposit I put down. First, the venue, a chic rooftop lounge downtown with a view of the city lights. That was $500, just to hold the date. My family's involvement was purely supervisory. My mother, Brenda, would call during her lunch breaks from the country club. I saw the pictures of the venue, honey. It's nice. Are you sure the lighting is flattering? Olivia needs to look her best for the photos. She sent back my invitation drafts 3 times. The font is a little cheap, don't you think? Let's go for something more elegant. Each suggestion was a veiled criticism, a reminder that my best was never quite good enough. My father, Richard, managed the budget, my budget. He'd text me at random hours. Did you get a quote from that caterer yet? Don't skimp on the food, Maya. We can't have people thinking we're cutting corners. He never once asked if I needed help, if I was okay. His only concern was the image, the facade we were building. I was spending my own hard-earned money, the money I'd been saving for a new lens and a trip to Portland, a city I dreamed of photographing. But every time I hesitated, a wave of guilt, expertly cultivated over years of emotional conditioning, would wash over me. It's for your sister. It's for the family. Olivia was the worst. She communicated almost exclusively through Instagram DMs, sending me photos of influencer parties with one-line commands. I want a flower wall like this. This is the kind of cake I want. 5 tears. She never asked about the cost. She never said please. It was as if she believed these things would simply materialize out of thin air, summoned by her sheer desire. Any attempt I made to connect with her, to make this our project, was met with a cold indifference. Despite it all, a foolish, stubborn hope kept me going. It was fueled by the one thing I was pouring my actual heart into, a photo album. Late at night, when the emails to vendors were finally done, I'd pull out a box of old photographs. I found one of us as kids, maybe 6 and 10, building a lopsided snowman in the backyard, our faces bright with a joy so pure it made my chest ache. Another of us on a Ferris wheel, Olivia's small hand clutching my arm, her eyes wide with wonder. I carefully arranged each photo, writing little captions underneath, memories of a time before our family became a performance. I imagined the moment she would open it. I saw her face soften, her eyes fill with tears of genuine emotion. I pictured her wrapping her arms around me in a hug that felt real, a hug that wasn't for an audience. In that fantasy, she would look at me and say, "Thank you, Maya. This is the best gift I've ever gotten." That single, imagined moment of connection was the fuel that kept my engine running. It was the carrot I dangled in front of myself, the promise that this time, my sacrifice would finally be seen. The night of the party arrived on a crisp October evening. I was at the rooftop lounge by 5, 2 hours before the start time, overseeing the final touches. The place looked incredible, exactly like the fantasy Olivia had demanded. Champagne-colored balloons shimmered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, which offered a panoramic view of the city settling into twilight. A massive flower wall, which cost me a small fortune, served as a perfect photo backdrop. The 5-tiered cake sat on a pedestal like a monument to my dwindling bank account. The band I'd hired was doing a sound check, their soft jazz a sophisticated hum in the background. I'd even bought a new dress for the occasion, a simple, dark blue slip that made me feel more confident than I had in months. I checked my reflection, smoothed down the fabric, and took a deep breath. Tonight, it would all be worth it. 6 o'clock came. The official start time. I stood near the entrance, a practiced, welcoming smile on my face, my hands clasped in front of me to stop them from shaking. The staff was poised, the bar was stocked, the band was ready. The only thing missing was the guests. 6:15. I pulled out my phone. No texts. No missed calls. I sent a message to the family group chat. "Hey. Everything is ready here. Can't wait to see you guys." The message was delivered, but not read. I told myself they were probably stuck in traffic, trying to make a grand entrance. 6:30. The lead singer of the band caught my eye and gave me a questioning shrug. My smile was starting to feel like a mask cracking at the edges. The hostess approached me, her expression a careful mix of professionalism and pity. "Ma'am, should we have the servers start circulating with appetizers?" Just give them a few more minutes," I said, my voice sounding strained. I walked over to the windows, pretending to admire the view, but really, I was just trying to escape the sympathetic glances of the staff. My heart had started a frantic, painful drumming against my ribs. I sent a direct text to Olivia, "Where are you? The party is starting." No reply. I tried my mom. Nothing. Then my dad. Silence. A cold, heavy dread began to pool in the pit of my stomach. The beautiful, empty room started to feel less like a party and more like a tomb. My hands were trembling as I finally decided to call. I tried Olivia first. Straight to voicemail. My mom's phone didn't even ring, it went straight to voicemail, too. It was off. Panic began to claw its way up my throat. Finally, I dialed my dad. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, he picked up. "Maya Bean," he said, his voice distant and distorted, as if he were on a speakerphone in a large, echoing space. I could hear a cacophony of sounds in the background, chattering voices, the clinking of glasses, and a faint announcement in a language I recognized as French. "Dad? Where are you guys?" I asked, my voice tight, barely a whisper. "The party started half an hour ago. Nobody's here." There was a pause, and then I heard it. A low chuckle that slid through the phone and into my ear like a shard of ice. "Oh, right, the party," he said, the amusement in his voice unmistakable. "About that. Surprise. We're in Paris." The world stopped. The humming of the lights, the soft jazz from the band, the city lights outside the window, it all faded into a dull, roaring silence in my ears. Paris. They were in Paris. What? I managed to choke out. "Yeah, we landed a few hours ago," he exclaimed, completely oblivious to my shock. "Livy just deserved a real birthday celebration, you know. A trip of a lifetime. Isn't that right, sweetie?" I could hear my mom and Olivia giggling in the background. My mom's voice chimed in, "Oh, Maya, you should see the cafe we found. It's darling." My mind was struggling to catch up, to process the sheer scale of the betrayal. "But, the party," I stammered, my voice cracking. I spent months, the money." And then came the line that shattered what was left of my world. My dad laughed again, a careless, dismissive sound. "Oh, that? Come on, Maya, you didn't think that was a real party, did you?" He said it so casually, as if explaining a simple joke. "It wasn't a real party anyway. It was just a way to keep you busy while we planned this big surprise for Olivia." The line went dead. He'd hung up. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. The laughter of my family echoed in the silent, empty room. It wasn't a real party. My work, my time, my money, my hope, none of it was real. I was the joke. I was the distraction. The beautiful, perfect room I was standing in was nothing more than the stage for their cruelest prank yet. And in that moment, something inside me didn't just break. It turned to ice. If you've ever felt completely blindsided by the people you were supposed to trust, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with the name of the city you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more people. Thank you so much. I don't remember paying the staff or speaking to the band. I think I just handed the venue manager my credit card and mumbled something about a family emergency. I walked out of that rooftop lounge and into the cold night air, a ghost leaving her own funeral. I didn't cry on the drive home. Crying felt like a luxury I couldn't afford, an emotion that belonged to the naive girl who had walked into that restaurant hours ago. The person driving home was someone else entirely, someone forged in the cold fire of betrayal. Back in my small apartment, the silence was absolute. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat on my sofa in the dark, the city glowing through my window, and let the truth settle over me. For years, I had defined myself by my role in the family, the responsible one, the fixer, the ATM. I had traded my dreams for their comfort, my peace for their drama. And what had it gotten me? A punchline and a joke I didn't even know I was a part of. The anger came then, not as a hot flash, but as a slow, creeping cold. It was the kind of anger that clarifies, that burns away all the unnecessary sentiment and leaves only the hard, unvarnished truth. I was a tool. And they had just finished using me. I stayed like that for hours. Then, something shifted. I wasn't just going to be angry. I was going to be free. The thought started as a whisper and grew into a roar. I got up and started pacing, a restless energy coursing through me. I needed to get out. Not just for a walk, but out of this life. But how? My mind raced. Then, my eyes landed on a stack of old magazines I'd been meaning to throw out. I started cleaning, not because I cared about the mess, but because I needed to do something, anything. I grabbed the stack and headed for the recycling bin. As I did, the top magazine slid off and fell open on the floor. It was a travel magazine from a year ago. And there it was. A full-page ad. A stunning, moody photograph of a bridge shrouded in mist, with lush green hills in the background. Below it, in bold letters, "Find your focus. Portland, Oregon. 1-year intensive photography program." It wasn't a friend's suggestion. It wasn't a lucky search. It was a sign from the universe, delivered to me in a moment of absolute despair. It was a lifeline I had to grab. The switch was flipped. I opened my laptop, the screen illuminating my face in the dark room. The anger that had been simmering now had a direction. It became fuel. I found the school's website. I read about the courses, the instructors, the city. Portland. It felt like another world, a place where people created things, a place where Maya Reed could be a photographer, not just an accountant, not just a sister, not just a tool. A plan began to form, sharp and clear in my mind. It was terrifying. And it was the most exciting thing I had ever felt. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, the plan from the night before, not a dream, but a blueprint. The cold anger had solidified into a diamond-hard resolve. I started with my job. I typed out a resignation email to my boss, polite but firm. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. I didn't give a reason. I didn't owe them one. Hitting send felt like shedding a skin. Next, I opened a new browser tab and booked a one-way flight to Portland for 2 weeks from today. I watched the confirmation page load, the details of my escape solidifying into reality. My hands didn't even shake. Then, I began to dismantle my life in Missouri. I posted my sofa, my bed, my kitchen table on Facebook Marketplace. I listed them for cheap, not caring about the money, only about the speed of their removal. Anything that didn't sell by the end of the week would be donated. I was traveling light. Then, I turned to the photo album. The symbol of my foolish hope. I looked at the happy, smiling faces of my younger self and Olivia, and I felt nothing but a cold distance. A letter felt too emotional, too pleading. They didn't deserve my emotions. They deserved a transaction. I logged into my online banking and spent the next hour meticulously going through 3 years of statements. I exported every transaction that was for them, Olivia's tuition, the check for the new tires on my dad's car, the hundreds of dollars in groceries. I highlighted each one, compiled them into a neat PDF, and printed it out. It was a 6-page document detailing thousands of dollars of my money that had been siphoned into their lives. At the bottom of the last page, I wrote one single sentence in black marker: "This is the final invoice. Happy birthday, Olivia. You're on your own now." I slipped the pages inside the front cover of the photo album. My final call was to my Aunt Carol, my mom's estranged sister who had moved to Portland years ago. We weren't close, but she was the only family member who had ever looked at me and asked, "But what do you want, Maya? without any agenda. I kept the call brief. I told her I was moving to Portland to take a photography course and asked if I could crash on her couch for a few weeks while I found my own place. There was a pause on the line, and then she said, "Honey, you can have the spare room for as long as you need." I had a feeling this day would come. She didn't ask any questions. She didn't need to. Her unquestioning support was the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. I hung up the phone, looked at my half-empty apartment, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could breathe. They came back from Paris a week later, tanned and laden with shopping bags. I know because I was just leaving my apartment to drop a box of books at Goodwill when their Uber pulled up. They didn't see me. They were too busy laughing, Olivia showing off a new designer handbag to my mom. I slipped back inside and waited. It took them less than an hour to discover my empty apartment and the album I'd left on the kitchen counter of our family home. The banging on my door was so violent I thought it would splinter the wood. "Maya! Open this door right now." Richard's roar was muffled, but the rage was crystal clear. I took a steadying breath, walked to the door, and opened it. They stood there, a trinity of indignation. Richard's face was beet red. Brenda was clutching her pearls, her face a mask of wounded disbelief. Olivia stood behind them, holding the album with the tips of her fingers as if it were contaminated, her face twisted into a sneer. "What is the meaning of this?" Richard bellowed, storming past me into my nearly empty living room. "You're abandoning your family." "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said, my voice eerily calm. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I'm just closing my bank account." Brenda stepped forward, her voice trembling with theatrical hurt. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. By shaming your sister with this spreadsheet." "Shaming her?" I let out a short, sharp laugh. It sounded foreign, even to me. "You think a list of financial transactions is more shameful than leaving me in an empty restaurant on the other side of the world? You're just jealous." Olivia shrieked, finally finding her voice. She threw the album onto the floor. The pages flopped open, revealing the invoice. "You're jealous that I got to go to Paris and you're stuck here in your pathetic little life." I just looked at her, at the beautiful, spoiled stranger my sister had become. I didn't feel anger, just a profound, sad emptiness. When it became clear their emotional attacks weren't working, Richard played his trump card. His eyes narrowed into slits. "You think you can just walk away? Where do you think you got the money for all this, huh?" He gestured wildly at the party expenses on the printed pages. "You stole it. From our family savings account." We checked. My blood ran cold, not with fear, but with sheer disbelief at the audacity. "I called the police, Maya," he said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening growl. "They're on their way. You're not going anywhere." He was telling the truth. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers were standing in my doorway. My family stood behind them, smug and victorious. The lead officer, a tired-looking woman with a notepad, asked for my side of the story. Without a word, I walked to my desk, picked up a folder, and handed it to her. It contained my own bank statements for the past 3 years, my pay stubs, and a copy of my work contract. "Officer," I said, my voice steady. "As you can see, every dollar I make is direct deposited into my personal account. The account my father is referring to doesn't exist. Every expense for that party, for my sister's tuition, for their lifestyle, was paid for by me, from my salary. It's all there." The officer spent a few minutes flipping through the documents, her expression grim. She looked up from the folder, first at me, then at my father. "Sir, your daughter's records are immaculate. There is no evidence of theft here. In fact, it seems she's been incredibly generous." She then turned to him, her voice hardening. "Filing a false police report is a serious offense. I suggest you resolve this family matter privately and don't waste our time again. The color drained from Richard's face. Brenda stammered, speechless. Olivia just stared, her mouth agape. The officers gave me a sympathetic nod and left. The silence they left behind was deafening. Their final weapon had been disarmed. Their power over me was gone, and they knew it. With their legal threat neutralized, they were left with nothing but empty words. Brenda tried a different tactic, her eyes filling with crocodile tears. Maya, honey, we can talk about this. We're a family. We can fix this. No, I said, the word simple and absolute. I walked over and picked up the album from the floor, holding it out to Olivia. We can't. I opened my apartment door. It's time for you to go. They stared at me, shocked by my finality. For the first time, I think they truly understood that they had lost. They shuffled out, defeated. I shut the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my heart hammering not from fear, but from the adrenaline of liberation. My flight was the next day. But before I left, I had one last thing to do. It wasn't enough for me to be free. They needed to understand the consequences of their actions. I sat down at my laptop and composed an email. The recipient list was long, every aunt, uncle, and cousin in our extended family. The subject line was simple, the truth about Olivia's Sweet 16 party. In the email, I laid out the entire story, calmly and factually.